Hey everyone, we're doing something a little bit different today because I have an announcement to make. I am making a movie, which, okay, I run a film YouTube channel, so in some ways, this was always going to happen eventually. But I want to be very clear, this is not a bit. This is happening. Now, I've been writing for the better part of a decade, nearly a dozen unproduced spec screenplays, 4 self-published books, 3 novels, and a novella, and a very long, very patient relationship with the question of when it was going to be my turn to actually make something. I graduated from Hofstra University in 2018, and back then I directed my senior thesis film. I'll put a little bit of it here so you could see, but I spent the next 7 years on other people's sets, learning how the whole thing actually works from the inside out. And now, finally, it is my turn to put the director's hat back on. For a feature film, no less, for something that I've been building towards for a long time. The film is called Comfort Zone, and right now I want to play you all a video that I made for the crowdfunding campaign to give you a taste of what this film is. So without further ado, here it is, and be sure to stick around to the end because I have a lot to talk about after this. What would you do if you found out your best friend hadn't left their home in 4 months? My new film, Comfort Zone, is the story of Andy, a sharp, fiercely loyal Brooklyn nurse who discovers that her oldest friend, Jeremy, has been keeping a secret. His undiagnosed OCD has prevented him from leaving his apartment in 4 months, and none of his friends noticed. And now Andy has to figure out what to do, and it turns out, so does everyone else. Now, where did this story come from? Well, a few years ago, I myself started having a hard time leaving my apartment. I got very good at seeming okay, and because I seemed okay, nobody asked, and because nobody asked, I never told anyone. But eventually I started asking myself a question I couldn't let go of. What would happen if they found out? What if the people who knew me best suddenly understood what was actually going on inside me? Would they know what to do? Hell, would I even know what to do if the situation were reversed? I didn't have a good answer, and I'm not sure that I have one now. But that's the question at the heart of this film. Not just how do you help someone who's struggling, what do you actually owe the people you love when they're falling apart? What Jeremy's crisis does is expose every fault line that was already there. People who thought they knew each other find out they had very different ideas about what friendship actually requires. The films that shaped this one, like Metropolitan, Before Sunrise, Kicking and Screaming, Clerks, were made by people who pointed a camera at a group of young adults, let them talk, and trusted that the conversation itself was the story. That's the tradition that this film works in. It's talky, ensemble, specific, and funny. Now, I've spent nearly a decade on film and television sets as a gaffer, camera assistant, assistant director, and editor, learning how films get made from the inside out. I've written over a dozen spec screenplays and 4 self-published novels, and yet I have been for a long time someone who helped tell other people's stories. But this is one that I have to tell myself. The goal of this campaign is to raise the money to put this film in front of a camera in September of this year. Every dollar goes directly into production, into the crew, the locations, the props, the production design. This is an independent film in the truest sense. Just a group of people who believe in this story and want to make it as well as it deserves to be made. Comfort Zone is a film about showing up when it matters most. So that's what we're asking you to do. Thank you. All right, so that's the film. I want to acknowledge something right away because I think it's worth being upfront about. YouTube filmmaker makes a movie is at this point a whole genre. Kane Parsons is bringing Backrooms to theaters this year. Curry Barker has Obsession coming later this year. Chris Stuckman made Shelby Oaks last year. Britannic, who have been making some of the funniest shit on YouTube for years, made Pizza Movie, which is on Hulu right now, and I highly recommend everyone watch it. I might have a video on it next week or something. And that's not even the complete list. Something genuinely interesting is happening here where this platform has become a legitimate incubator for first-time filmmakers, and I don't think that's a coincidence. People who make film content for a living are, almost by definition, people who have thought very seriously about what makes movies work. At some point, you run out of other people's films to analyze, and you just kind of have to put up or shut up. And I want to be honest that what we're doing is on a very different scale than some of those other projects. This is not a genre film with a creature budget. This is a micro budget drama comedy shooting in Brooklyn and Queens, New York, in apartments and on sidewalks. We are operating in a tradition where Clerks got made for $27,000, and that was kind of the point. The smallness is not a limitation, it's the form. Now, I want to touch on some of the personal stuff, why I wrote this film, and I want to be clear that I'm not going to rehash what's in the video because you just watched it. You don't need me to repeat myself. But what I will say is this: 2023 was the year that anxiety entered my life like a blinking marquee that I just could not look away from. Suddenly, and without very much warning, I became socially anxious in ways that I never had been before, and I started exhibiting what I now recognize as symptoms of OCD, though I haven't been officially diagnosed, so make of that what you will. What that meant practically was that leaving my apartment became genuinely difficult for me. Birthday parties, networking events, casual invitations to hang out. I started finding reasons to skip all of it. And I got very good at making those reasons sound plausible. What I noticed writing through that experience was that I kept trying to look at it from the outside in. Not what does this look like from inside Jeremy's head? I already knew that part. But what does it look like to the people who love him? What does it look like when someone you care about starts disappearing and you're all just busy enough with your own lives to let the reasonable explanations fill in the gaps? What happens to a friend group when one of its members stops showing up and nobody catches on until it's been 4 months? That's how this film got written, not as a confession, but as a bit of a thought experiment with real stakes. I wanted to look at my own situation from the outside in, and I wanted to take seriously the possibility that the people around me might not have known what to do. Because if I'm being honest, I'm not sure that I would have either. And that question, what do you actually do, is what connects this film to a tradition that I've been obsessed with for most of my life as a moviegoer. There's a specific strain of American independent cinema, mostly from the late 80s through the late 90s, that I think about more than almost any other body of work. I'm talking about films like Metropolitan, Clerks, Reality Bites, Singles, Empire Records, Suburbia, Before Sunrise, The Day Trippers, High Fidelity, Mallrats, Chasing Amy, The Last Days of Disco, Party Girl, Kicking and Screaming, the Noah Baumbach one, not the soccer movie with Will Ferrell. You Can Count on Me, The Squid and the Whale, Igby Goes Down. If you know those films, you already have a pretty good picture of what Comfort Zone is trying to be. And if you don't, just go watch them. Seriously, I'll wait. But while I'm waiting, let me tell you what I think makes them all work so well, because I don't think it's always articulated cleanly. Every single one of those films that I just mentioned is about people who are smart and not yet wise. Characters who have read the books, who have the references, who can construct an argument for almost any position, and who are nonetheless completely unprepared for the actual sort of texture of adult life.
Yo, you're getting me all upset here.
They think they understand the world, and they're in the middle of finding out that they don't. It's a second coming of age. Not the teenage kind where you're discovering who you are, but the late 20s kind where you've already decided who you are, and the world is persistently and sometimes brutally informing you that the picture is more complicated than you thought. What Whit Stillman understood, what Richard Linklater understood, is that you don't need plot to make that dramatic. You need conversation. You need people sitting in diners and on stoops and in back seats of cars talking about the things that they can't quite say directly, revealing themselves in the gaps between what they mean and what they're willing to admit. The dialogue is not decorative. The dialogue is the story, and the reason those films have lasted, the reason people my age still quote Clerks and still find something true in Reality Bites, even as the cultural surface of it dates, is that the emotional reality underneath all of that talk is still completely intact. That's the tradition that my film Comfort Zone is working in, and I want to make the case that this particular moment right now, the mid 2020s, is overdue for a film that does what those films did, but for a generation whose specific confusions are just a bit different. Because we have something those characters didn't, and it has made things both better and considerably stranger. Because look, my generation grew up with the language. That's the thing that makes this generation's version of the story different from the one Linklater or Stillman or Smith were telling. The characters in Metropolitan and Kicking and Screaming were emotionally inarticulate in a very specific, very recognizable way. They talked constantly and felt deeply and had almost no framework for connecting those two things. We have that framework. We have therapy speak and attachment theory and nervous system regulation and a complete cultural infrastructure built around the idea that mental health is real, that it matters, that you should take it seriously. And yet, people are more anxious, more depressed, and more isolated than ever. I don't think that's a coincidence. I think we're living through a moment where the commodification of wellness has outpaced the actual delivery of it. Self care became a bit of a marketing category. Therapy became a subscription. SSRIs are normalized. Meditation apps are everywhere. And if you could afford the copay and the time off of work and the therapist who's actually taking new patients, maybe you're okay. And if you can't, well, the language is still available, the vocabulary is free. There is something genuinely destabilizing about living in a country where your access to mental health care can evaporate based on who wins an election, or whether your employer decides to change your plan, or whether the practice you've been going to for 3 years suddenly decides to go out of network. We have built an entire cultural identity around taking mental health seriously and then placed the actual infrastructure for it on the most precarious possible foundation. And I think a lot of people, especially people in their mid to late 20s who came of age during 2008, who got hit by the pandemic right when they were supposed to be building their lives, are carrying around a very sophisticated understanding of what's wrong with them and a very limited ability to actually do anything about it. That's the world that this film lives in. Comfort Zone is not a message movie. Nobody's delivering a speech about healthcare policy, but this world exists as texture, as the water that these characters are swimming in. In the third act of this film, there's a Friendsgiving scene where there's a dinner table argument about exactly this: gratitude, culture, the economics of wellness, whether the language we've inherited is actually helping anyone, or whether it's just a more articulate way of avoiding the harder conversations. Everyone at the table is making a good point, but nobody quite lands it. Because that's the other thing those Gen X slacker films understood that I want to carry forward. The smartest person in the room is not necessarily right. Being articulate about your damage is not the same as doing something about it. And at some point, the older you get, the more this becomes true, you start to see the cracks in the people around you. The ones that they've been plastering over for years, and you have a choice about what to do with that. When every other structure fails, and a lot of structures are failing right now, visibly in real time, what you fall back on is the people in the room with you. Community, friendship, these specific, irreplaceable, imperfect thing that happens when people who know each other well enough to be honest decide to actually show up. That's what this film is about, and that's why I think it's worth making. So here's the ask. Plainly stated, if anything I've said in the last however many minutes resonates with you, the link to the Seed and Spark campaign is in the description below this video. Every dollar goes directly into production, into paying my crew, into making sure they're well fed, into making sure that we have the gear to make this. And look, if donating is not in the cards for you right now, I understand. I get it. I have eyes and ears and a New York Times subscription as well, but you could still help by sharing this video, by sharing the campaign page. Put it in front of the person you think would care about it most. For a film at this stage, visibility is almost as valuable as funding. The more people who know that this film is coming, the better chance it has at finding the audience it deserves. We are shooting this film in September of this year, so we're just months away. Everything is pretty much in place. We have the crew, we have the actors. Now we just need the funding to get us over the finish line. One thing that I hope to do from now until September are monthly updates so you could all see what your money and support is going towards. Thank you all so much for watching and hopefully considering to support this project. Watching this channel grow over the last couple of years has been incredible and heartwarming, and I really appreciate all of you. That's going to do it for me. Do all the normal things, like and subscribe, and hit the bell to be notified when new videos come out on this channel. Go follow me on Letterboxd. Go check out my podcast. And more than anything, please help me get my film off the ground. I'll see you all next time.